SnowTrax is brought to you by Polaris. Think outside. Ski-Doo. Winter lovers, get out there and experience that Ski-Doo feeling. And by Hercules Tire. Ride on our strength.
So if there's one thing we know more than anything else, it's that you, our viewers, love shootouts. You don't want a comparison. Nope. You don't want us to just talk about one sled by itself. You want us to put them in the ring and battle it out. And I think you like it when AJ and I do it because we tend to disagree on some things and get all grumpy with each other. So today, we've got a pretty great shootout for you guys, one that we're really excited about.
Yep. Today's shootout is the 600 class high performance trail sled. It includes the MXZ X-RS 600 E-TEC. It includes the XCR 650 from Polaris and the all new Catalyst ZR from AIRTIMES with the 600 C-TEC 2 in it.
So let's get started. And which category do you want to start with?
I think right away we got to talk about engine performance because that's the big one. The 600 XRS, the motor has not changed. It's the same as it's always been in the 600R, and it's a solid contender. It's very clean. It uses fuel very, very wisely. It sips oil, and it
runs like a top.
Yeah, runs like a top, cleanest in the business. And probably, I would say, the most reliable overall. It's shown great reliability in the long run. Not that there's been an issue with others, but that's a great motor.
It's an extremely refined motor, but it's not an exciting motor.
Yeah.
And I think, you know,
there's nothing bad, but there's nothing terribly awesome about it either.
Yeah, there's nothing that stands out. This is without a doubt the fastest spooling engine I think I've ever ridden. I mean, it just spins up so quick. Doesn't have a ton of bottom end, but the mid-range and top end is really meaty and really strong.
Yeah, really strong. And hands down, it's the best sounding two-stroke in the business right now. Yeah, definitely the best sounding two-stroke. It's got a throaty, kind of raspy sound, a lot of induction noise. I really like it personally.
If you're a real motorhead, if you're a ZR buyer, if you're an XCR buyer, if you're an XRS buyer, chances are you're the kind of guy who's going to appreciate a brappy motor that has an angry sound to it.
Yeah.
And that one absolutely does.
Yeah.
Now we move on to the XCR. This motor is, it just has wide range of power. The power starts at engagement and goes to full shift.
Yeah, from initial throttle input, it definitely feels pretty stout down low, but it's that kind of mid-range where you get on the pipe and it really comes alive, and it just seems like it has more than both of these motors. At 3/4 throttle, there's still something there.
It's like, I wouldn't say this is the most refined, although it is extremely smooth.
It is. It's very
like
smooth.
In the sled, it's very smooth.
Yep.
It's not the cleanest, but it's very clean. And it starts and runs every time. It's never given us any trouble, never given us any reasons to worry about it. So it's a really stout, solid motor that's proven. It's been around for a bunch of years now.
Yep.
Nothing bad to say about it. And
I think that's why in this category, it gets the win.
Polaris is #1 because it just has the best power. That's all there is to it. Can we agree that it'll be 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that's category 1. Let's move on to the next category. Ergonomics. To start off, let's start with the AIRTIMES. I mean, the AIRTIMES is the newest. It's a new chassis, so this is something we've never ridden before, and man, does it ever fit right. AIRTIMES has done such a good job of figuring out how a rider needs to interact with a snowmobile. That's it.
Yeah, the center narrowness of the seat is the most like a motocross bike of any snowmobile I've ever ridden. Polaris came out with a narrow seat and said, this is more like a dirt bike. AIRTIMES comes out and they go, oh yeah, check this out. This is way more like a dirt bike. And the one thing I find ergo-wise that is super huge, and I think you're gonna probably back me up on this, the side panels aren't that exciting looking. They don't have extra plastics, they don't have painted stuff, they don't have an extra insert, they don't have buttons, they don't have this and that. They're smooth, but when you wanna put your leg out there and slide into the front of the panel and get into a corner and really go at it aggressive, There is nothing to catch your knees on.
That's something I hadn't thought of, about all the extra stuff that's on these panels that make them look cool.
Yeah.
But actually, they're the things that make it hard on your knees when you're sliding back and forth. You're absolutely right. You're right. That's not an exciting looking panel in that area, but boy, does it work good. When you want to move and talk about a Polaris, this has been the benchmark of ergonomic perfection for many years. We've all agreed this thing is near perfect, and it hasn't changed. It's the same. It's still excellent.
I actually really like the Polaris. I like the way it fits. The one thing that bothers me is when I slide my knee into this panel, it has ridges and areas.
Didn't bother me before, but it does now.
I know.
Yeah.
Before I thought it was great because it's one step, in my opinion, better than the Ski-Doo for getting off the side of the sled. But now this is one step better than what was the best. So, I mean, really, I think that sums up this category, does, but it's...
Well, and the other thing to consider is, one thing that I look for is that feet to knees to hip sort of arrangement. How are you sitting? How is your body positioned in those pivot points in your body? And Polaris has always had that perfect sort of knee to hip ratio, your feet in the right order.
Yeah.
The Arctic Cat, I think, is as good. I don't think it's necessarily world's better, but it's as good.
Yeah.
The problem is that the Ski-Doo is nowhere near as good.
Today riding, I felt the Ski-Doo, felt like I was very low, like I sat with the bars up higher and I couldn't necessarily see the trail and the skis the same way as I could on the Polaris. The Polaris, I felt like I was higher up and I had more of an attack position, and the Arctic Cat, I felt like I was way higher up, but not at a high point where the center of gravity was.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Now, the Ski-Doo, you just made some perfectly valid points. I completely agree. The seat is a little soft, your bum is a little low, your knees are a little high. There's a whole bunch of little things that just seem to not work for me. Now, it's not that it doesn't work, it just doesn't work as good as this does. If we're gonna line them up in order, we're gonna line up ergonomically, we're gonna put the Arctic Cat first, we're gonna put the Polaris second, we're gonna put the Ski-Doo in third place.
Okay, so for the next category, it's going to be suspension, and we're going to break out front and rear separately because I think it's a valid thing. There's not everybody's front and rear suspension work in perfect harmony. Let's start with the Ski-Doo, which has R-Motion out back.
We have talked a lot about how great R-Motion is over the years. You only have to watch one episode of SnowTrax to hear us talk about how much we love it. So I don't think we have to go into huge detail here. It soaks up every size of bump without ever complaining. It resists bottoming like crazy, and it just works.
And a cool thing to note is that Ski-Doo now does use KYB QA3 shocks, which are quick adjust shocks. So much like a Fox QS3 with 3 position, but something to note, all 4 shocks on this sled are QA3 quick adjust. There's 3 positions, but you can put that dial anywhere in between the 3 positions because it's just like a tap faucet.
They call it half clicks.
Yeah, you can go in between anywhere. It's exactly like opening your faucet. It's not actually a clicker. So you can put them anywhere in between. Something interesting to note, rear end on this sled, it gets the win by a long shot. So let's just go to number 2 and 3.
Okay, so we got a Polaris with the Pro CC, and we've got the Arctic Cat with their slide action skid frame that has been tweaked in the Catalyst. So what are the characteristics of these two that you like most? What are the things that stand out to you as being good for each?
So I do like that this has ATAC, so we can adjust it, but that's rear arm shock only. However, I found that the Arctic Cat out back is just, I don't know if it's that it's valved too stiff, but it's just too stiff. The soft setting is okay, but I would like to see the soft setting 1 full step softer.
Well, and there's something to be said about that front arm shock too, that you're not adjusting.
Yeah,
so that front arm shock might not be valved right, and it's not adjustable, so you're kind of stuck with that.
That's my biggest complaint is this, it rides good. And when I get into really big bumps, which I did today, I rode through some really big whoops and hit them really hard and fast. I swear on firm, you could ride this on a snowcross track and you would not bottom it out. There would be no bottoming out because it's so firm. So I don't see a need for that, even as an aggressive trail rider. But when it's on medium and soft, I find that it rides really good, but it's just not as good as the Polaris.
Yeah, the Polaris, the Pro CC is really, it's the perfect midway between the two because it's not quite as plush as an R-Motion. It's not quite there. It's close, but it's not quite there. But it definitely has more plushness than the slide action in the Arctic Cat. It just does everything you want it to do. It just doesn't do it the best. And you can't argue, especially when you got the velocity high-low shocks in the back. You've got high and low speed compression adjustability. They're a super high quality piggyback shock. They're durable. It just has everything you'd want.
I mean, so I think these sleds are lined up in order.
It's first,
1,
second, third.
2, 3.
Yeah, for sure. So the next category we're gonna talk about, obviously, is gonna be front suspension. And I think I think we should talk about front suspension and handling because they are very much connected.
I'm impressed with the front suspension, the calibration, and the way that it works.
And ATAC really works good on this because it is both front shocks. So when you change it, you notice huge the difference in the front end.
It works really good. I will say on hard packed snow, fresh groomed, frozen in the morning, this snowmobile pushes through the corners just a bit more than I would prefer. But it's very polar opposite to a Ski-Doo, which feels like it's locked on the trail in those conditions. So,
but then you switch the conditions and they completely switch.
As soon as it gets soft out, this comes around and it starts to ride up front really good. And I'm not talking bump absorption because the bump absorption is actually very great. I like it. It doesn't get out of control. It doesn't start to wander or do anything weird. You can pound through the whoops and the bumps and the 18-inch moguls wide open throttle.
In the corners.
In the corners. And it will track.
And it just stays where you want it.
So it works good that way. It's just that the push in the corners is what goes away. Once the snow becomes a bit softer and more granular, all of a sudden this front end becomes like a really, really high contender.
We'll just go in order here. We'll go to the Polaris. The Polaris has traditionally had the best front end in the industry.
It still does.
It still does. Yeah, this is another one that we're just not even going to bother.
Polaris's front end is like Ski-Doo's R motion. That is what it is. It is the perfect harmony.
It's the R motion of the front end.
It is. Yes. Yes. It's the P motion.
I mean,
maybe we shouldn't say that.
Shouldn't say that. The thing about the Polaris front end that just surprises me every time is when you're riding really hard and you get into those bumps in the corners that start shaking the sled, it doesn't move an inch off of the path that you've picked. It just goes around the corner. Really, the whole sled doesn't even start to shake a whole lot.
It doesn't lift the inside ski either.
No.
It will skip through, and if it gets real aggressive and real rough, it will just kind of jump out a little bit, but it's progressive and it's controllable and it doesn't get out of control.
I mean, soaking up bumps in a straight line, it's also the best.
Yeah,
it works amazing. It never does anything weird. And then you come over to the Ski-Doo, which we have never held anything back about the fact that we're not crazy about this front end. But the thing that I noticed during our testing here a little earlier when we were riding back to back was when you put this in the bumps and you start steering through bumps, the handlebars are doing this all the time.
Yeah,
like
they're moving.
It's not staying straight. It's going in different directions and I'm not sure which one it's gonna pick.
Yeah, it's not the most confidence-inspiring front end. In my opinion, it just falls short of these two competitions.
So we're gonna line these up basically 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
SnowTrax is brought to you by Princess Auto. Ideas, tools.
The last category is going to be overall build quality.
Yeah, I think it's pretty important.
Yeah, and the area in which we differ, why don't you explain your thoughts on that?
My thought is if you are a performance trail rider, you're kind of like a guy who rides a performance bullet bike or, you know, some other performance product. You want that thing to look super cool. You want it to be fit and finish that's like pristine. It's like a supercar. You don't want to buy a supercar and look at it and go, wow, this thing looks kind of like it was hacked together. In my opinion, I give the Ski-Doo top points in this department because the paint quality, the fit and finish, the plastics, and just the little things that they integrate, to me, it's just like, it's the perfection of fit and finish and build quality. It gets top marks for me.
And see, for me, I think that the performance buyer who's going to buy one of these sleds is less concerned about absolute fit and finish. They want an aggressive looking sled, and their main focus is the performance aspects of the sled.
Yeah.
With that said, I can't argue with you that the Ski-Doo definitely has the highest build quality. There's no question, regardless of what you prefer, this thing is built better than anything else on the market.
Yeah.
So it's going to win this category. It has to,
for sure.
Now, how do we rank these two? Because that is, in my opinion, that is the most aggressive looking snowmobile I've ever seen.
I think
wicked.
We called it build quality, so I think we got to stick to that. Aggressiveness, I think this sled looks smaller than every other snowmobile, lighter, and it feels that way when you get on it. It feels lighter than both of these sleds. Feels like a motocross bike. These feel like a snowmobile.
Yeah.
And that's something that is completely different, but I think that fits into my ergonomic feel and why this won in my ergonomics. I think the aggressive look is great. I think the fit and finish and build quality is number 3 in this department. And it's first year. It's first year.
Polaris fits right in the middle. If you look at a Polaris, there's spots that you go, wow, that's perfect. And then there's spots like this little piece right here that keeps popping out that's not perfect. So this sled I can live with no problem with the build quality.
It's not
Doesn't
terrible.
matter.
Yep.
That one I can live with too. This one, if you're buying build quality, you're buying a Ski-Doo. That's all there is to it.
Yep.
So I think the points are going to break down 1, 2, 3 in this row.
After riding for a full day, I think that in this category, the 650 XCR gets top points.
It does.
I think
it deserves top points.
It deserves, yep. The Catalyst is a newcomer that's fighting real hard, has a little ways to go, but it's doing a lot of things better than I think any of us ever expected.
But darn, for a first year, it's doing good.
It's good.
Yeah.
And the Ski-Doo is a great quality product, but I think when you push as hard as these two are, it sees just a little bit of a reduction.
I think this is where the Ski-Doo is going to struggle the most, because handling and front-end ride quality are so important to a guy who is pounding corners at full speed. If you're not, then this becomes a lot less of an issue. But in this category, unfortunately, it is the Achilles heel of this sled. And I would love to see Ski-Doo do something about that, because I think if they did, they would have a seriously hard to beat snowmobile.
The one thing I know about Ski-Doo is that they never stand still. They're always changing, and they're probably working 10 years in advance of this snowmobile. So there's probably something in the works, but for right now, I think we've leveled the playing field and brought it to actual fact, and it's the XCR.
SnowTrax has been brought to you by Arctic Cat, share our passion. Outaouais Tourism, snow-covered landscapes to explore. And by FXR, brings you more.
This right here is a Backcountry XRS 850 146 with a 2-inch lug. And yes, it is in the G5 chassis for 2024. And this snowmobile is, by Ski-Doo's own definition, as capable as a 2016 Summit. And while this snowmobile may be as good as a 2016 Summit off-trail, the truth is, on-trail, it's incredibly good as well. And to me, Backcountry has always been about the best of off and on trail. This is a true 50-50 snowmobile, and when you put C-Motion X out back, you get a ride like no other crossover. Out back on the C-Motion X, the rear arm and rear shock have both been lengthened around 13 millimeters. The front arm's been brought back into the chassis about 30 millimeters as well. And with this combination, you get greater suspension travel and a way better performing rear suspension that's better on trail, but also more effective in the deep snow. It's a total game changer for the Backcountry G5. Now, when it comes to the front end suspension, this sled does feel laser guided on the trail, considering that it's a full-blown crossover. Like not a little crossover, this is 50-50. RESX is working very good up front. This is the narrowed up front end, and the KYB Pro 36 shocks up front do their job very well. The new rack steering system can't be overlooked, as it really does settle down the front end of the sled, and it gives that precise front end steering feel. The rack system is only found on the XRS models. Out back, we have two KYB Pro 40s. These are serious shocks, and it's because it says XRS that you get those. Now, the next thing that I want to talk to you about is overall build quality and engine performance all put into one, because to me, the build quality, the NVH, noise, vibration, and harshness, and the engine package, how it works together with P-Drive, really is almost one all-encompassing thing on a Ski-Doo. And it's a thing of beauty. You get on this snowmobile, and there is no felt vibrations from idle all the way up into the mid-range, where on many snowmobiles and on previous G4s, you did feel a lot of vibration. The whole quality of this sled, it just drips with it. I mean, I've said it before that Ski-Doo took sap and they made syrup, and I really think that that's what this is. It's all the things that were good, but maybe about 90% there, and they boiled them down, and they got everything to the best quality, the best fit and finish, the integration of technology, whether it comes to the 10.25 display and the illuminated hand controls that are just absolutely flawless, to all of the other little features that integrate into this snowmobile. Ski-Doo has done a really good job at refining. And that is what G5 in Backcountry is. It's Backcountry refined. Now, on trail, this sled rocks corner to corner. I've already told you that. It works really good, and the rear suspension rides great. Off trail, it's incredibly capable. Yes, I believe Ski-Doo's claim of it being as capable as a 2016 Summit, and with these nice mountain running boards that clear out so easily and the narrowed up front end, it will bounce through the trees and go through the powder like nobody's business. You can play off trail with this and don't expect that you're gonna get stuck. Now, when it comes to track options, you have quite a few. This snowmobile does come in 146 as well as 154-inch versions. In the 154, you can get a 2-inch or a 2.5, and in the 146, you can get a 1.6-inch Cobra, a 1.6-inch Ice Cobra, and a 2-inch Powder Max. Now, I know what you're thinking. All I've said is good things about this snowmobile, and the reality is, there are a lot of good things to say about this sled, but there's still a couple of things that I would like to see updated, and I imagine in the future you're probably going to see. Number one, I love the fact that it has the adjustable brake lever on it and the new master cylinder, but what I don't love is the brake caliper down below. It needs the 4-piston caliper because brake feel is very, very vague. It's almost on-off. It feels as though the cylinder is actually seized. I don't like that. I would prefer to see the 4-piston, and I think probably next year you're going to, especially on XRS. Now, the 850 motor in the Backcountry XRS, yes, I love it. It feels good, it's very competent, and it delivers solid performance and amazing economy. But when it comes to XRS, I would really like to see the new turbo motor available. And again, for first year, it's only in the competition package, but I have a sneaking suspicion that when it comes to early order, you're probably going to be able to for 2025. So hold tight on that. Nothing wrong with the 850, but I can always use a little more power, especially when it's off trail. But when it comes to the end of the day with this Backcountry XRS, I am very impressed. Ski-Doo's boiled it down, and what they got here is one sweet ride.